the rarest GameCube games. What up, Randies? My name is Stan from RandomTens, and after a landslide victory, it seems you guys really want to see a showcase of the rarest GameCube games, and being a massive fan of the system myself, I'm more than happy to oblige. It's crazy to think that the Nintendo GameCube will be 15 years old this November. But with its focus on gameplay rather than graphics, it's no surprise to longtime fans of the console why people are still so in love with the little purple lunchbox all of these years later. From underrated staples to the best multiplayer experiences of the time, the GameCube is the home of many iconic games. But like any other console, as the years go by, some of these games have become extremely valuable. So without wasting any more time, grab your Wavebirds and let's get into it. Here are the rarest GameCube games ever released. Man, Fire Emblem Fates was such a great experience, it probably makes you want to go back and play some of the other games in that series, right? Well, if that's the case, I'd imagine many fans would probably recommend one of Ike's games as a starting point, as they're really strong entries in the franchise. What they may not tell you, however, is that both of these titles now fetch ridiculous amounts of money on the second-hand market. But today, we're specifically looking at Path of Radiance. Now, this game isn't crazy rare like some of the others on this list, but it's still fairly hard to track down for a reasonable price. This is the result of two main things. Firstly, Fire Emblem wasn't very popular back in 2005, and most general audiences wouldn't even know who Ike was until 3 years later due to Brawl, so you can imagine Path of Radiance wasn't exactly plentiful to begin with. But more importantly than that, thanks to some stellar recent entries, Fire Emblem is more popular than it's ever been, and so many folks, including myself, are dying to get our hands on the older games. However, this increase in demand has made Path of Radiance shoot up to over $100 US for North American copies. So no, Path of Radiance certainly isn't the most limited or even rarest GameCube game ever. But if the entire franchise keeps gaining momentum, one day it could be. Alright, so I'll be honest with you, I don't really have much to say on this next entry, other than it's not even really a game. You know how a few years ago Game Freak made Pokemon Bank to basically act as a cloud-based generational storage system? Well, what you may not have known is that back in 2004, they'd already sort of taken that step, but on the GameCube. Pokemon Box was basically Bill's PC the video game, as it let players store up to 1,500 creatures from the third generation of Pokemon games via an included link cable. It's admittedly a weird concept, but in a bid to lure Pokemon collectors, it was as limited as it was odd, only being made available in North America via purchase at the Nintendo World Store, or online in a time when e-commerce still hadn't quite caught on. Either way, this exclusive proto-Pokemon Bank will cost you about $150 US nowadays thanks to the massive Pokemon collecting fanbase, as well as its initial scarcity. Unless, of course, the gameplay is really just that good. What do you get when you take two of the era's most revered single-player adventure games and bundle them onto one affordable disc? A recipe for rarity stew, of course. The Metroid Prime Wind Waker combo disc is considered fairly rare by the gaming community, despite both games being made pretty available across a few different releases. The reason behind why this specific compilation game is deemed so coveted by Nintendo collectors is because it was only released once during the 2005 holiday season and quickly sold out due to being such a great deal. If you want the bragging rights of having this specific version of these games, then be prepared to spend upwards of $150 depending on the condition. But honestly, unless you love the hunt for collectibles like myself, I wouldn't recommend paying this sort of money for experiences you can get elsewhere for a fraction of the price. Despite being rare, I'd imagine that all of you know lots about the franchises mentioned so far on this showcase, but now let's take a detour into the obscure. Cubivore was the bizarre localized version of a Japanese action-adventure game known as Animal Leader, and for those who haven't heard of it, just know that it's as weird as it is rare. Cubivore is basically Darwinism the game, as the objective is to mutate over enough lifetimes until your cube is able to destroy the superior killer Cubivore and its cronies. It's actually a pretty inventive idea. However, good luck finding one because like many other Atlas games, including the limited Ogre Battle 64 cartridge I mentioned in the last episode, this game was made in embarrassingly low numbers for the West and now sells for about $150 US in its case. So in a roundabout way, Cubivore went from starting out as this tiny overlooked game to mutating into a collectible that actually beats franchises like Fire Emblem in the rarity department. Natural selection strikes again. I never thought I'd see the day, but guys, I finally get to talk about a sports game, and in the top spot in a rarity video no less. NCAA College Basketball 2K3 doesn't typically sell for as much as some of the other games on this list, but in terms of rarity on the GameCube, nothing else has it beat. First of all, it should be noted that although there are some perfectly fine sports games on the purple lunchbox, traditionally it wasn't really the go-to platform for the genre, especially for ones without Mario on the cover. But because of the stigma, and because Sega just bailed on releasing its 2K series of games on the GameCube halfway through this game's production, it's not shocking at all that this is far and away the hardest game to track down, especially over a decade later. Now, I managed to find a copy online for around $120 still with its case and manual, so like I said, it can still be had for a relatively decent price. But due to its controversial history and extremely limited supply in North America, it's universally accepted that NCAA College Basketball 2K3 is the rarest GameCube game ever released. Well, that's all the time we have for this episode of The Rarest, but if you enjoyed this video, why not check out some of the others in this series? My personal favorite GameCube game ever released is definitely Super Smash Bros. Melee, but I'm curious to know what some of your guys are, so let me know in the comment section below. If you've got a friend or a sibling who loves everything GameCube, make sure you share this video with them and see if maybe they even have some of the items featured on this showcase, and as I always say, happy hunting, baby rhinos!